Welcome to the January Donovan Show, where we train women how to be a woman in a world that can no longer define it. Today, I'm very excited about our guest. I personally reached out to him because I thought, where are the great men? And that men out there have been so, I would say, sidelined by the feminist movement that it's really just admirable to find men that are leading the charge and fighting the good fight. And often in this movement of equality, it's the good men that have been forgotten. So today I get to introduce to you Adam Allred, who launched Boy Nation. Did I say that right? Boy Nation, which is essentially how to make men great men again, which I thought, what a great title. You rode that wave and it's so essential. So, Adam, welcome to the Woman's School.
Yuri, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I really love these conversations between men and women when we get into these types of topics because I think it is so necessary right now in our day.
Yes, and it is necessary because I think for so long we've been pinned against each other, and I think that the world is ready for the complementary conversation. So I'm excited. I'm just going to walk you and pick through our audiences essentially are just full of great women who are striving to be better, who really understands the need for them to pursue who they are as women, and so they're working hard. It's we train women how to be women, so they're going to be hungry for what you have to offer today.
I'm in
So
for
first.
the
Yeah, so
day.
no, it's awesome that we need great male role models like my hubby. So okay, so just how did you even get inspired about this Boy Nation? Where did it come from? How did it go about? You kind of give me a little bit glimpse of it, but just for our audience.
Well, it's been an evolution of a series of events, but I went through a divorce 6 years ago, and it was just such a horrific thing to go through, especially from a man's perspective. I just felt like I was really kind of set up to fail, and the whole process was rather unfair. From my point of view. And when I was going through it, and then subsequently after I came out of it, I had so many friends and associates reach out to me, dozens of them, maybe over 100 people reached out to me, guys that were like, what is it like to go through this? This is where I'm at. I'm really struggling. And I realized that so much of the framework that I had been given and, that I'd been programmed with from my youth as a boy coming up, my religious programming, my cultural programming, family programming, school, all of that, it just didn't work. And I was in sort of a victim mindset in much of that marriage because I'm like, I'm doing everything right. Why isn't our marriage working? I'm checking off all the boxes that guys are supposed to do. It's just this really terrible relationship. And I just saw that there's so many other guys in the same boat, essentially describing the same set of circumstances to me. And so I realized there's really something out there. I had to start reprogramming myself. I had to start thinking outside the box and kind of put everything on the table in terms of what I believed and didn't believe, and kind of picked everything up and evaluated it and what makes sense and what's working, and started putting my life back together. And really felt that with a series of other events, felt compelled to start sharing some of what was working for me with other people. And so I started posting up some social media content and felt really pretentious, and still do, because I'm just a guy I'm not an expert at anything except being a dude, and I just started sharing some of that with the world. And like my fifth reel that I shared, it got like 2 million views. I was absolutely blown away. I had no followers. I had nobody who even knew who I was outside of my immediate proximity. That was crazy.
Well, I think that tells the hunger for, I think, great men and truth. And I think that's where I think our nation is hungry for because of everything that sort of happened. So I'm not really actually surprised that you went viral because for so long the focus is on women. And even when we have a really good friend who also went through a divorce, and just the court system, everything is really kind of geared towards women. Our education system. And so men today are really at a deficit and a disservice to start with. So I'm sure you've endured so much of that injustice that's kind of built in our infrastructure. Okay, so going back to through your own experience and just studying probably men, what do you think is the biggest sort of problem or roadblock in masculinity and manhood today?
I think you have to trace it back to the rise of feminism ultimately. And I don't blame feminism on women, to be honest with you. I think this is a masculine issue. I think too many guys were asleep at the wheel. And I think there was a lot of predatory men in the early stages of
Mhm.
feminism that helped bring it to light, bring the movement, into the mainstream. But really, essentially, what you have is with feminism, I know, it was paraded as a way to get women to have more rights, I don't know anybody who doesn't want women to have rights. I have two daughters along the way. I want them to have every opportunity that exists out there. So nobody that I know of argues with that. But that wasn't really what it was about. Essentially, it became a political movement designed to destroy masculinity and femininity,
Mhm.
and ultimately to destroy the traditional family. And they've done a phenomenal job at that. I mean, you have single moms, are all-time high. You have divorces that are just they continue to go up. And you have so essentially what you have is you have boys that are being raised by women.
Yeah.
And even when there's a man in the home, most of the time the man has been neutered by all of these
Mhm.
forces that are attacking masculinity. So boys aren't growing up with strong role models as fathers
Mhm.
anymore, that potentially, or even if they even have a father in the home. And so often they don't. And then they roll into a school system that's largely dominated by females. And so they look at females as the authority structure, the authority in their lives.
Yeah.
And when they come out of the schooling system, they're looking for a woman to give them purpose and to give them direction. They're essentially looking for a mother. They're not looking for a partner
Mhm.
because they've been so neutered along the way. And this is a huge loss, obviously, for men and women. So men have just lost their way. We're looking for women to give us purpose, and instead of leading and instead of knowing what it means to be a man and stepping into that role with some grit and with some purpose, we've given that up in favor of acquiescing to these societal
Yeah.
expectations that have been
Yeah.
put on us.
Yeah, and for the sake of equality, we've diluted gender, and I'm even just studying now. So you go 75% of our educators are female, but then actually so are our psychologists. So these boys that go to the school, they get in trouble, right? Because they need 5 recess to actually exercise their like boyhood, but they're not made for circle time. And then they get referred to a psychologist, and then there's toxic masculinity. And so there's, you have men right now who, like you said, they just even know who they are just because they've been robbed of just what it means to be a man, to be strong. And I think that even when I ask women today, describe to me sort of what strength of a man is, like they don't know what it looks like, Adam. It's like, where's the men of character, of interior strength? Like it's true that feminist has totally been hijacked. Initially, it was good, but when infused with the Marxist movement, it's just completely is destroying America. But and I always say, it's never just a man problem; it's a man and a woman problem. It's not like we're isolated. I'm going to even ask you from your perspective, what do you think right now? Describe the state of women from your perspective.
Well, it won't be flattering to women. And
Okay.
I don't mean this as a criticism of women because I think if we trace it back, it comes back to us as men to step up and really take accountability for this. But I think we, especially with the younger generations coming up, these modern day women are the epitome of narcissism.
Hmm.
They've been told that they are right, that they don't need a man. They've been told that they've kind of already arrived, and that men are bad and men are weak. And every single sitcom displays men as being idiots and kind of bumbling around, while the woman is anchored and wise, and it's always her that's right in every one of these these scenarios that we're constantly watching. And so I think this is just a huge problem across the board, and it really is literally the destruction of our society right
Yeah.
now, breaking down the traditional family. We're not having birth rates like we used to have anymore.
Mhm.
Women are creating the opportunity to raise kids and have the most incredible experience that you can have in this life. Like, I don't know anything that's cooler than creating life and raising it well. And women are being told that they should go into the workforce and that they should trade their divine femininity and this incredible life experience for a job. And it's so crazy to me because, like, 85% of men polled hate their jobs. Men don't like to go to work already. It's not like this is men are keeping this as from women, like, hey, we want to be the ones that are digging trenches and roofing in the land in the summertime, and we want to have all these, we want to go out and work really hard. They do it because they're men and they've got to provide, and that's what they're
Yeah.
doing, to be responsible. So the fact that women have traded this for that, I
Mhm.
think they've bought into the lie, and I
Yeah.
think they know it subconsciously. Most of them subconsciously, they're not happy, and obviously they're not happy. Depression rates among women are skyrocketing.
1 out of 5.
It's horrible. So the prescription is give medication, and nobody's happy for this. So it's a huge issue.
Yeah, and I also feel like I wonder what the connection is for you with right now, just a lack of strength in masculinity and just the confusion within women, connecting that to how basically our country was almost sold into communism. I don't know if you're able to sort of connect that dots because here's my perspective, Adam, just a woman who's trained women, is that women today, motherhood is sold as something that shatters dreams. That's hard. I'm a mom of 8, and the mother the easiest thing I get to do. And I don't say that to impress you. I say that because it's so rewarding, it's say that because there's nothing more beautiful than raising children. But if you go everywhere else, it's motherhood is the death of any dreams. And what I'm seeing is that women are unhappy in their own home. They don't want to be mothers anymore, and they're overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you have no capacity to see what the needs are in our culture, our country. Like, I feel like we were asleep in the wheel. And so, do you see that massive connection of a lack of femininity and masculinity and even the state of America, or sort of what could have been?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you women have been told that masculinity is toxic and bad, and then in the same breath, they're told that they are men and they're just as equipped as men and that they should be like men, and they're being conditioned to be the very toxic masculinity they claim to hate. And I think a lot of women, my personal experience and what I've seen in my proximity, and then what I've been inundated with on social media, is that women roll into relationships feeling largely entitled
Yeah.
to have everything that they want out of it, and have very little expectations on them to provide very much.
Yeah.
And so men are stuck in this place where they're looking for women to give them purpose, and then they roll into these relationships and they're horrific, and then they can't get out of them because the consequences for them to go through a divorce are also horrific. And so they're just stuck in these really hard places. A lot of men, they're kind of like the Walking Dead in these relationships where they're just like going through the motions because a divorce, and a lot of them, a lot of men, like the guys that I know that I talk to, they won't even consider divorce. This is where I was at in my first marriage. I
Mm.
wouldn't even consider divorce because I'm thinking about the kids. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I got to take care of these kids. I can't drag them through something like this. So, if I got to be the captain that goes down with the ship, I'll just stay at the helm and sink with this thing because the kids are more important than my own happiness. And I do believe that's true. I mean, the kids, if we're not invested in raising the next generation well, what are we really doing here? I mean, nothing really makes a lot of sense. There's a great movie called The Children of Men. I did a
Mm.
podcast on this recently.
Oh, yeah.
It's an older movie. I'd recommend anybody watch it, but it's this dark apocalyptic world where humans can't have kids anymore, and like the biggest celebrity in the world time is the youngest child, the one that was born last. And it just displays, I think, what the world would really look like if
Mm.
we weren't having children anymore. And we're kind of rolling into that right
Yeah.
now in real time. Like the movie is unfolding. It's quite prophetic. It's a
Yeah.
really powerful movie. I recommend everybody watch. So I just think men are in really, really tough places. They get eviscerated by the courts if they leave. They're committed to their children, and they're in relationships with women that are just absolutely narcissistic.
Yeah. And what do you think about this, Anne? Because, for me, I find that women they're they're born, I think, or created by God to be nurturers of humanity. And our womb tells us that, our body tells us that. But women today have really lost the art of nurture. They don't actually even know how to cook. They don't even actually know how to compliment a man. They don't know how to walk in the room without saying, "Look at me." I mean, that's our selfie world, like we train women. So we walk in the room with a heart of service. Like, how do you serve this room? And the idea of preparing a meal, the sacred dinner, it's sort of like, hey, you're better than that. And so we have women today, even good women, who have really no home management skill, no capacity to sort of have this interior strength. Like when you think of your grandmothers, you think, they were pillars of interior strength. They didn't have dishwasher, at least for me in the Philippines. They weren't crying over, dishes or a baby, crying. There was just this like strength that was interior. And today, so many women walk into marriage and just with a weak mindset. Like they are, every little thing is triggering. They don't have the capacity to say, I'm like, it's really not a big deal. Like, own the house, rise up, get up early, live a life of excellent femininity, where you understand your capacity to serve your spouse, but like it is a foreign language, and I share that because even today I see with married men, these women don't know how to care for their spouse, but they want everything. They want the mental support, the financial support, the physical support, but they are so blinded of how to give it. And it is narcissistic. But because we live in the world, the future is female. I just did kind of I'm like, the future is not female. That tells me you don't have logic because the future can never just be female because we can't create on our own. But this is literally what I see the suffering of men is that they're not cared for. Do you see that in your just like boy nation of like these men who maybe are married, but like my wife has no capacity to study my needs, study my physical needs, my emotional needs, or anticipate my needs? Like that's a skill. And so men kind of just, like you said, just they're going through the motion. They're not, they don't have life in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I see so much of that now. To be clear, too, there are so many good women out there, and unfortunately, I think we're seeing the loss of that on a huge scale. But there are just a lot of really powerful, dynamic women out there who are showing up and want to do this right and really care. But one of the ways that you see this, just so I get this on my social media all the time, is this display what you're describing is with sex. So men, a woman uses her sexuality to attract a man. This is just biologically, right? She's attractive, she's beautiful, and men have these urges that women don't understand. It's just how we're wired. God created us this way. It's not like we're choosing to wake up every morning and choosing this. It's just like we are wired that way. And for me, like I've had these conversations with my wife. She's really dialed into this, but we've had these conversations about the differences between us and how for me to create an emotional connection, I have to have that physical connection.
Mhm.
It goes hand in hand. And so women will use their sexuality to attract a man, and a man goes into a relationship making a commitment to this woman that
Mhm.
he's not going to have any sexual relations outside of this relationship. And that's a sacred trust that he puts in her. It's a huge, I don't want to say sacrifice, but it's a huge commitment for him to say,
Mhm.
like, I'm going to be totally faithful to this
Mhm.
woman. And then I hear so many women saying, well, I shouldn't have to have sex if I don't want to have sex. And I don't understand that, how you can, to me, that is just the indication of this narcissism that we're
Yeah.
talking about. Realistically, you're talking about sex 2, 3 times a week. I don't know. It's not like this is
Mhm.
some sort of huge time commitment.
Mhm.
But if women would take just that seriously and say, hey, I'm going to take care of my man. I'm going to
Mhm.
make sure he's in fighting shape every time he goes out his front door. I'm going to make sure when he comes home, he feels affection, he feels love.
Mhm.
Most of these women would get so much in return for that small investment of just making their man feel like he's special and
Yeah.
making sure he feels like he's desired by her.
Yeah.
The man would you'd see men just blossom in those type of relationships, but instead the opposite happens. They go in there and then they, with a period of time, they're cut off from that. And
Mhm.
now they're stuck in this sexless marriage and they're still kind of holding the commitment and saying, I'm not going to have sex with other women. And all society expects them not to. They're a monster if they have an affair. And I don't have any use for infidelity, so I'm not pushing that or justifying or making an excuse for it. But
You're not going to play a Coldplay concert. I'm just joking.
yeah, I'm not going to a Coldplay concert and getting caught on camera, with my mistress from work. I was faithful to my first wife, and I'm faithful to my second wife because that's how I was raised.
Mhm.
But we have boys are raised on what the expectations are of them to bring into a relationship.
Mhm.
And I think women are largely raised on what the expectations are for them to get out of a relationship. And I
Yeah.
think this is where there's a huge crux, the huge crux of this problem that we're facing right now is women are like, what can I get? And men are like, what can I give? And it's just, it's soul killing for men. And it ultimately just erodes away any sort of happiness or fulfillment that you can get out of a marriage. And worst of all, it's a blowback on the children. They go
Yeah.
through, they see this, they witness it, they're part of that energy. And then usually that's followed by divorce.
Well, I think that's a byproduct of the feminist, I would say, propaganda. And I think it's women don't use have manipulated the situation. And honestly, I would say, Adam, I don't think women know how to. And from what I see, even good men, they're so overwhelmed in a home life, like taking care of the kids, because there's no training in how to be a woman. It's like the men come last when it
Hmm.
should be the man comes first. And I would even say, like, you should be also attractive. Like you should not let yourself go. You should, because if this is a man that's going to be attracted to you, like you have an obligation as a woman to look good for your man. Like I think that's something that we need to train women. This is a man that's committed to you. Commit to the fact that when he walks in the room, you're presenting your highest and best self. Women don't understand that. Like, you don't just, there's nothing wrong with PJs, but you show up and you wake up and you think, how do I dress for my man? Women need training on that. It sounds so simple, but they literally have, they go and they think of how to take care of the kids, which is great, but the disorder is causing marriages to, divorce. And on top of that, you've got friends that are kind of feeding you like this narcissistic thing. And that's why I think just because we are born a woman, it doesn't mean we know how to be one. And that's what we want to train women is to become nurturers. How do you make sure that he feels love, physically, mentally? How do you believe in him? These are trainings that are so important. I'm going to ask you, these are kind of fun question. So,
Can I just jam on that real quick? Because
yes, please.
I just want to reply to that. I think that goes both ways, sure. Because men have been conditioned essentially to replace their mom with another mother, they've lost how to be impressive to their spouse as well. They start treating their wife like she's their mother. And I think if you want to have a healthy, vibrant relationship that has chemistry in it, both people have to be showing up every single day trying to impress each other.
Yeah.
You have to treat your partner like you're still dating. And it's really interesting when you see people go through divorces. It's like they both men and women start getting in shape again. They start taking care of themselves again. They're eager to go impress other women or other men, but they didn't put the effort into impressing the person that they made these commitments to and that they've had children with and that they have so much like time and experiences with. They just kind of lost that. But the second that that relationship's falling apart, men's testosterone starts going back up. Women are getting back in the gym. They're all looking good again. They're going back out into the world. And then it's just like a rinse and repeat. They just do it all over again. Get back into a relationship. Stop trying to impress each other. Stop trying to show up. I think it definitely goes both ways.
But I see the cycle of the children. Like I have an 18-year-old, just turned 18, and we go around the table for dinner. Dinner is sacred at our house, and it's loud with 8 children, but it's awesome. And one time I asked him, I said, what do you love about dad? Like it was dad's birthday, we do an honoring, and he said something that I thought was profound. He said, I love that he loves you, mom. And it's just an 18-year-old who was 17 at that time. I thought, that's the impression that we can leave for our children that no money can buy. But the truth is that, it's hard to do that when there's no even training, Adam, on how to find the right person or how to be the right person before you even find the right, before you get married. There's no training. Like, where do you go to say, what skill do I need to find the right man for? What skill do I need to be the right woman? What skill do I need to thrive in marriage? Because often, what you hear, you get married and then all things kind of go south. You just kind of let yourself go. I'm like, but that's when you double down because now there's children that are watching this. And by the way, God can turn things out of good. I come from a divorced family where it was so hard. And it was because of that that I thought, I am going to work on myself so that I will never have that. So even my greatest ache as a little girl became my greatest compass and fuel to make, to work on myself, which I say that to you because you have children, and I think that our wounds can become truly our greatest compass towards our contribution, which is kind of what you're doing. The pain that you endured, you're using it to serve men, which is the gift, that you're giving. So
Yeah,
I'm sure they see that.
I appreciate that. The universal educator in life is suffering, and there's a reason why God designed life to be a life of suffering and pain, because
Yeah.
it's actually good for us. It's what breaks down our ego. It's what opens us up if we'll allow it to be this curriculum that teaches us how to become better.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think so many people, men and women, are so unwilling to face their own crap
Yeah.
that they just start to project it onto others. And when you're in a relationship, this happens. Yeah, I felt like that in my first marriage. I was essentially an emotional punching bag. Anything
Mm.
that she was happy with was my fault. And there was no sense, and I'm not trying to demonize her. I just think this is indicative of
Yeah.
what's going on in so many relationships. But it was like there was no self-awareness, like, hey, maybe the reason why I'm unhappy is because of me. Me taking accountability for my own happiness, my
Yeah.
own progress, my own fulfillment. Instead, it was just outsourced, like you're the reason that I'm unhappy and it's your fault. And this criticism that was just perpetual in that relationship. And speaking of the children, if you don't deal with your dysfunctions internally, personally, and if you don't deal with your dysfunctions in a relationship, your children are going to inherit that,
Yeah.
and they're going to have to deal with it. And that's the legacy that you pass on to your children, your wins and your losses. And so there really is like a sacred responsibility on all of us, particularly those who are going into this world to have children, that we are constantly striving to be more self-aware and constantly striving to level up and get better and be healthier individually and in our relationships so that our children can inherit that from us.
Yeah. I think there's no pursuit of excellence, and I see that in our culture in general. There's no excellence in the way we show up as women, excellence at work. It's just sort of this entitled, and I think that's what I think people are hungry for meaning, for truth, and I think we are. I think going to move into that. I see a lot of hope, Adam. I don't know if you see it, but I think we're tired of the fluff. We're tired of, just sort of this meaningless life, and I think men are tired of sort of being kind of a punching bag. And I think, but both in men and women, if we focus on how do I live my, my masculinity or my femininity with a life of excellence, the reverence of this sort of gift of womanhood and manhood. And I just think that we need to go back to sort of that call of character formation and development of our character. Because here's what I see. I saw a huge influencer just yesterday, and he was talking to these two girls, and he said, women are emotional. And he went off on it. And he's like, you're entitled to your emotion because 7 days out of the month, you should be sitting with bonbons, and you're just an emotional mess, and we should just deal with it. This is like, I mean, he had, I don't know if he has a million followers. And I just sat there and said, you're giving women permission to essentially have no command of their emotion. I said, you are robbing women of their strength. You're basically saying that I have no control over my thoughts or my emotion. But that's what we sell women. It's like your emotion is your God. We change laws based on feelings. And I have to retrain women to say, your emotion is something you have control over. But we just have made it such our God, and partly because we've feminized our infrastructure. And so women are so entitled to be like, this is how I feel, and I'm just going to bleed all my negativity to you with no level of awareness of the people around them. I mean, this is like an epidemic that they don't see, that they have become so entitled that their emotions are literally just like, it's whatever I feel like, whenever I feel like, and take it or leave it. I'm like, whoa. I was looking at that, and as somebody who's trained thousands of women, I was upset about that comment. I said, you need to meet more good women who has command of their emotion. And you as a man ought to raise a standard of women to not sit in bonbons all day because you have, you're on your period. I mean, really? No, thank you. Anyways, it fueled such anger inside of me because to me, those are the lies that get spewed by, I think, by our culture. It's like, whatever I feel like, sure.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And this goes both ways as well. Men are constantly looking for validation as well. This is the whole manosphere thing where it's like women are bad, women are terrible. It's not your fault. Women are just bad. And even if what they're saying is accurate, right? Like the descriptions that they're laying out, validation is never going to make your life better.
Mhm.
And so you really have to take ownership of that and say, okay, what is it that I'm going to do better? How am I going to level up? Because at the end of the day, you attract what you are, not what you say you want.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with women. Women seek validation. I see this especially. I think it's rampant with women right now. I don't see women tell each other the truth. Even my wife, she is the most authentic, beautiful person I've ever met in my entire life. She's absolutely she's a better human being than me. And I'm not saying that to pander. If I was really honest and like, putting out a list of things, she's just such a incredible person. But there's something in the female dynamic where they don't tell each other the truth. They just validate each other. And so she won't ever tell her friends the truth because she's afraid it'll hurt their feelings and it'll affect their relationship. Because if she tells them the truth, they're going to be deeply offended and they won't have a friendship anymore. And I think this is something we have to get away from. We have to stop seeking for validation. What this guy's doing on social media, the reason why he has so many followers is because he's pandering.
Right.
He's selling validation, and
Mhm.
people like to be told they're fine just the way they are and it's not their fault. And
Yeah.
then they just continue to go through this life of misery because they don't ever stop to take accountability and say, wait, everything in my life is my responsibility. Everything might not be my fault. You can't pick who your parents
Mhm.
were. You can't pick if you got hit by somebody else in a car accident. You can't pick some of the events that transpire in your life, but everything is your responsibility to take it and either turn it into something good or to use it to be a victim and to be validated. And so many people are in that victim mindset where they're just validation is like a drug,
It's a
and they're just
drug. Yeah.
yeah.
And they don't know their value. And I think for women, we have to actually train women to know that their worth is not based on other people's opinion, which sounds so simple, but that's what women do. So they don't know how to actually communicate accountability, like within friendships. So our friendships have become shallow. I'm not talking about your wife, just in general, like we don't know how to say, I love you, but you really should not be doing that, or I love, so I think part of it is goes both ways, but I think it goes back to training, Adam. Like nurses train, doctors train, armies train. Why don't we train as women to know how to hold each other accountable, to speak well, to communicate with nurturing tonality? I mean, these are trainings that are just not present in our education system. I want to pivot into a conversation and kind of our last point, which I want to pick your brain. Describe to me what you would say a beautiful woman is. And I know your wife, you've kind of outlined her, but how would you describe a beautiful woman?
The first thing that I noticed about my wife, so I went through the divorce and I was never going to get married again. Like I was like, I'm happy, I'm living at peace now. I have children. I wasn't bitter. at women, but I was like, the only thing that can screw this up is if I
Meet
get
another woman.
exactly. I was like, I'll take peace over that, like, and yeah, my buddies, I had some buddies who were going through divorces at the same time, so there must have been something in the water. And one of my buddies was pressuring me to get on these dating apps, and I'd never been on one before. So I was kind of like, all right, I was on one for like a week or two and got off, but not interested. And he's like, oh, you got to try this one out. And I met my wife on there, and we were talking on this app for a couple of weeks, and then we met up. And one of the thing that stood out to me the most, that was so attractive about her, is that one, she was just authentic.
Mm,
She wasn't putting on any shows. Like, she just said what she thought. She doesn't do it with her friends. I mean, she does to an extent, but she has to. She is a very authentic person, but she feels like she's walking on eggshells with her girlfriends because she knows that they're easily triggered and that they'll get really upset if they hear the truth. And so but with me, she was just really authentic. And I thought, man, this is so attractive. I know exactly who this person is. And the more I got to know her, the more that authenticity became more apparent to me. So I knew exactly who she was. And
mm,
she wasn't holding anything back. She just presented herself just as she was, take it or leave it. And so that caught my attention initially because I'd never dated girls prior to that were like that. Like, this is so unique. The other thing that was so attractive to me is that she took accountability.
mm,
She would, and she still does to this day. But the first time, the first time she said sorry to me, which was like really early on in our relationship, I was like, I think that's the first time I've ever heard a woman genuinely, not just say sorry to like, smooth things over, but genuinely like, hey, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done it that way. I'm going to do better. Like that kind of accountability, it just absolutely blew my mind. I was like, this person exists. This can't be real. And so I was really skeptical at first, but she's always been that way. And she's always trying to be the best version of
mm,
herself. She's always taking her own personal accountability for things. And I can't tell you how beautiful that was to me as a man to see a woman that just owned who she was. She was authentic about who she was, but she didn't feel like she was the finished product, ready to learn and grow and change. And she still says sorry to me all the time. And most of the time I'm like, what are you saying sorry? Sorry for? You didn't even do anything. But she just doesn't ever want to be in a position where she has some sort of ego or some sort of entitlement. She never has. It's just part of
wow,
her character. And those were probably the two most attractive qualities to me that
wow.
I saw early on when we were.
That's beautiful. And while you were talking, what comes out to me is humility. Because in order to have, accountability, in order to grow and to be authentic, you need to be humble enough to know, like, this is me, and I think humility is a beautiful word that we've often sort of lost. It's kind of the opposite of being entitled, but that's kind of what you've outlined to me is just where are the humble women, Adam, who can own up to their, failures. But one thing that I think is also not is missing is this a woman who's willing to grow. Like the idea of like today I'm gonna be better than yesterday. Today I'm going to redesign who I am so I can show up better. I mean, there's something so attractive about a woman who hasn't arrived, which
Yeah.
is it's just it's like they're magnetic because then it's like wow, I don't have to try to kind of pretend. Okay, advice for men and women today. How if you were giving advice to men and women, what advice would you give separately?
I think I don't think anybody should get into a relationship until they're first healthy with themselves.
Ugh,
I think you
amazing
have to
advice.
have a healthy relationship with yourself. And I think too many people go into a relationship from a place of need. They feel like they need to have that feeling of being in love. They need to have somebody they can spend time with. They're too afraid to be alone. And so people come into these relationships very unhealthy individually because they're not taking accountability. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't have a healthy relationship with themselves. And how are they going to make a healthy relationship with somebody else? They don't. You can't create a healthy relationship from two unhealthy people. And so I think you should take your time to really figure out who you are and really own the fact that you're not perfect and it's okay not to be perfect. I think we have all these standards in society. Social media is a big problem with this, where we have all this perfection that's constantly displayed, and then we're afraid that if we're not perfect, that we're going to be rejected. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why people are so afraid to take accountability. But when you can just be okay, like, hey, I'm screwed up, like I'm not perfect, and that's okay because I'm working on myself. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep working on myself. There's something really liberating in that when you no longer have to conform to societal standards or somebody else's standards. You have your own standard for yourself that you're just constantly working on. For most of human history, uh, I think the average life expectancy for men was like 32.
Hmm.
So they died early. Like you had to get to work pretty quick, and boys were men by the time they were 12 or 13, because if they weren't, their tribe wasn't going to survive,
Yeah.
and they had to reproduce. They had to carry on the torch. And so boys had to level up really fast because these types of catalysts for growth were just baked into society. And you say, where are all the women that aren't, why aren't women trained to be women? Well, it's because the women in their lives haven't trained them to be women. And the
Yeah.
same thing for men is because men haven't showed up and trained their sons on how to be men. It used to be that way though. Societies, that's how
Mhm.
they existed. There was really clear standards within each tribe or within each society about what it took to be a man or what it took to be a woman. And now, because the consequences, like if you didn't become a man early on, you died. That's what happened. You didn't know how to hunt. If you didn't know how to go to war, if you didn't know how to survive in the environment, then you were going to die. It forced us to level up in real time.
Yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
because those consequences are, I wouldn't say they're gone because there's a really heavy consequence for not leveling up. It's just elongated. We live to 80 years old or 90 years old now. And if you don't level up, you can live on your mom's couch in her basement, so you can get away
You can
with,
get away with it. Yeah.
but you're still dying.
Yeah.
It's a longer death now. Instead of dying, by a saber-tooth tiger, you're now just living the Walking Dead life. You're just going through the motions, absolutely miserable. And so I tell young men all the time, I'm like, take your time between your 20s and your 30s,
Mhm.
level up. Yeah, between 20 and 30, I should say. Take those 10 years where you go into the world, you gain some context, you start to learn what your purpose is, you learn how to
Mhm.
provide, you learn how to work hard and to take your hits. And then you can start to really learn who you are. And therefore you can start to make much more intelligent decisions about who your partner is going to be.
Yeah.
Uh, and now I think you're more equipped. There's the Goldilocks years. I was reading this just the other day. The Goldilocks years for the most successful marriages in America are between 30 and 32. When a
Hmm.
man gets married between 30 and 32, he has the highest probability of not getting divorced.
Really?
Yeah, it's really
I
interesting.
didn't know
So
that.
I think that would be my advice to people is like, one, just really work on yourself and get yourself in fighting shape and learn who you are and be happy being alone with yourself.
Yeah.
When I was going through college, I had so many buddies that were just like, their life wasn't going to start until they met the right girl. And they were just pining away this time, waiting for the right girl to come into their life and give them purpose. And I think that's a real tragedy. I think you should just love being a dude. And I think women should just love being
Yeah.
women and we should
Yeah.
be happy with ourselves. And then you can go find somebody else that's doing the same thing. And then you have a really good chance of creating a really vibrant, amazing relationship.
Yeah. And partly because I don't think they know how to, Adam. I mean, if you ask, where do men or women go today to learn how to be a man or how to be a woman, where would they go? I mean, just think about that. There's no even training on, how to discover your dreams or how to find your purpose. I mean, you could get that maybe in personal development, but every season, go to college campuses and you could have 2 decades of education, but not know how to make a decision. I mean, this is really where we teach about 100 skills in the women's school. And the training that we offer, it's like most women are like, gosh, I wish I would have had this when I was young, but there really isn't. And so there's no place to train, right? Like, even if a man wants to, I have an 18-year-old son. I can't send them to be like, this is your boarding school, training school, and how to be a man, right? But secondly, there's also poor role models, which is why I was gravitating to your work, because I think that they see sort of this weak men or sort of this guys who's like, yeah, I can do whatever I want, but the good men who are striving for a life of excellence, who's doing what is right. I think we're just starting to see that. I do, but it really is
Right.
kind of a challenge to find these role models, both I think for men and women. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I think there's a couple places because I got single mothers that hit me up all the time in my messages, my DMs, and they ask what can they do
Hmm.
if they have sons. And I do think we still have some things in place that help level boys up into men. One of them is sports.
Yeah.
Usually they have some strong role model in the form of a coach. And then they learn how to lose, they learn how to win, they learn how to work hard. There are still some of these things in our society that help with the process. But when you don't have a strong masculine role model in the home, you're really fighting an uphill battle. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be really, really hard for that boy to come into adulthood and know what it means to be a man. And I think that's exactly why the content that you're sharing, the content, people want this. Jordan Peterson said once, he said, we keep telling boys everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And they know it isn't. And that's why, one of the reasons why Jordan Peterson attributed so much of his success, especially among young men, is because he was telling them it wasn't fine. But he was telling them they can work on it and they can make it better. And if they're willing to like really step into that place of like self-development and self-awareness and accountability, that they can start making some changes. And it doesn't have to be overnight. Wake up the next day and make your bed. Just wake up and go make your bed and make tomorrow 1% better than today.
Yeah.
And you do that
Yeah.
for an entire year and you're 37 times better at the end of a single year. You can make massive strides
Yeah.
in a single year if you're willing to start taking your life seriously and your future seriously. But to the extent that we just keep going through this culture of validation and unrealistic expectations um, and this idea that we keep telling everybody everything's fine when everybody knows everything's not fine, we're going to continue to get the same results. But I'm with you. I see a lot of hope in the future. I think there's a lot of people waking up to this, and the fact that your content, my content, is resonating with so many people. You have women that are coming to you wanting to learn this. I have men doing the same thing. I have men tell me the same thing. I wish I'd known this when I was a kid. I wish somebody had talked to me about this. And it's always just so sad to me. I'm like, where was your dad? Where was your masculine role models? Why wasn't there somebody talking to you about this? Because I feel like the stuff I'm talking to is pretty self-evident, pretty basic, but it's not.
No.
It's not in
Common
society.
sense, not common practice. That's where we are. You
Yeah.
know. So, last question, cast a vision for America for me. Where do you think our country's going? What would you like to see? What do you see in America 5, 10 years?
I would like to see men and women coming back together and having conversations like
Mm,
this with each other that are honest. And I'd like to see men and women stepping up into their divine roles that God has given them of masculinity and
mhm,
femininity. I think femininity is the most attractive thing to a man. And I think masculinity is the most attractive thing to a female. And
mhm,
we have I don't even want to say a culture. I think we have an establishment, a concerted effort by the forces that be to keep us divided and
mhm.
keep us separated because a divided population is easier to control and manage. And so I don't think any of this stuff is natural. I don't think any of the things we're seeing right now, are the organic expression of human evolution by our state. I think it's quite the opposite. I have a buddy of mine who owns a ranch up in Wyoming. He's got 600 head of bison on the ranch. And I've gone up there and shot a couple of bison over the years and harvested the meat, and I feed my family with it. It's really kind of cool spiritual experience to be able to eat the food that I'm able to bring home, and it gives me an attachment to the food. It's just a really cool thing. But one of the things that just stood out to me as such a metaphor for the world that we're living in right now is he keeps all of the bulls out of the main herd. So out on the pasture, all the females and the calves. He doesn't bulls there because if the bulls are in the herd, it makes it a lot harder for him to manipulate and control the herd. So he keeps the
Interesting.
bulls isolated and he only brings them together when he's breeding them. Otherwise, they're totally separate because strong masculinity in the herd, a strong bull will make it harder for him to control the herd and file them off to the slaughterhouse. And so I think to the extent that we've attacked masculinity,
Yeah.
we're just suffering the consequences of that, seeing what happens to a society when it treats masculinity as something bad, none of which is good. And so I would like to see us as a nation rise up against this coercion and come together as men and women and step back into those traditional roles that have brought us to this point. It has been strong masculinity and strong femininity in our history as a human species that's brought us to this point, and we're trying to erase it as fast as we
Yeah.
can. I think we're going to step into some utopian world, and it's going to be a nightmare. It is a nightmare. We're seeing it all around us right now.
Well, I am hopeful because the media no longer has the monopoly that they used to. You're rising, people who actually are good people who want to have a voice are actually stating what the truth is. And now we can advertise truth and people have access to it the way they probably didn't before. I mean, that's what to me is exciting is that the model of womanhood doesn't have to be the Hollywood model of womanhood anymore. And now we can actually present a version of model of women and men that actually is in harmony with their nature. So that is exciting. I think for me, I think our work has just begun. I said, for those good faithful men and women, we have to carve out and we have to work hard and we have to reintroduce a life of excellence. Otherwise we're going to cave back sort of. We have to ride this wave of awareness and get to work. And part of it is that a lot of us have not been conditioned to work. We don't know what hard work is. And so I think that's the invitation here. Well, Adam, thank you so much for, I would say, honoring women. I see your content and I thought, wow, he's able to honor women and just celebrate us and the good women, and also distinguish between sort of the bad and the good, but also for being a role model to a lot of men, because at the end of the day, I can't do what I do without the good men. And I say that because, as a mom of 8, I always say, how do you do it, January? Because my husband is such a big part of this. It's never just sort of a January Donovan work. He's the man behind it all. And so the idea of men and women really coming together to, build our nation, I think is what you're saying. It's time. And I think we're ready for it. So Adam, thank you. Where can they find you?
January, thank you for having me on the show. You give me hope for the future. So I just really appreciate the work that you're doing, and it goes both ways. It is men and women coming together and stepping up and having these conversations and making these changes. Yeah, Adam Artificial on any of the social media platforms. Feel free to DM me. I will reply. It usually takes me a while to get back to it because my bandwidth is very limited, but I really try to be engaged with everybody who reaches out to me because I think it's important to hold these conversations, even if it's virtually. So look forward to seeing anybody who wants to join the party there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we will see you again, ladies. If you want to learn more, please go to the Woman's School and join our new Woman Masterclass for more training on how to be a woman in a world that can no longer define it. So God bless you all. Thank you.